There's a certain type of disturbing internet video that a lot of people are trying to emulate right now, and in my opinion, a lot of them get it wrong. Analog horror. Analog horror works best not when there are crazy jump scares or terrifying imagery. Don't get me wrong, that can definitely help, but they work best when they can convince you, even for a moment, that they are real. Dr. Nowhere, a project by 18-year-old analog horror creator Silas Orion, is a channel filled with about a dozen videos featuring weird creatures, hidden codes, and some gnarly body and medical horror, my favorite of which being titled The Boiled One, which is so well put together, and I love it so much you don't understand because I'm gonna Tonight we're going to be looking at 3 different projects by this channel, and I'm saving The Boiled One for last as it's a bit longer. Also, it's a new year, and I just want to thank you for everything. I love making these stupid videos a lot, and I get to keep going into another year doing this because of you, and I appreciate you a lot. Let me know down in the comments if there's anything in particular that you really want me to cover. I'm thinking about covering the indie horror game Mouthwashing, but I'm not sure yet. I still need to finish it. I'm only about halfway through, but I'm really enjoying it. I think I'm going to finish after I finish recording this, but moving on. Let's start ourselves off with the very first videos that appeared on the Dr. Nowhere channel. A strange, tall figure with a body seemingly made out of wire is standing behind a TV screen, sucking in long, labored breaths as a hand bangs on the screen, cracking it. The room around him is grimy, with blood splattered on the walls, and each time the hand strikes the screen, the crack gets larger. Me when I'm in an aquarium, and there's a fish I really like. The first part in a series of 3 videos which introduced us to Dr. Nowhere's channel, the series being called the Organator Enterprise. The creature we see here is known as the Locust, or Thumper. And as we continue through the series, we start to realize that he's just a little guy. Ladies and gentlemen, look at him and tell me you don't see a little of yourself. He's a black, tall, and lanky creature with an uncanny face, soulless eyes, long nose, and triangular jaw. The Locust has some strange abilities as we see him emerge through television screens and computer screens to haunt those who were watching him. The first video, titled Starving.Help, is more an introduction than anything, but one thing I noticed is how at first you think the hand is the hand of the creature, but it's not. It's someone else's entirely. That means there's a victim of this thing stuck in the television set with the Locust, and whoever it is desperately trying to get out and escape. But there is no escape as their bloodied hand reaches out to the viewer, and the transmission cuts out before anything of real substance happens. At this point, the creature doesn't seem to have developed any real way to communicate with us, but just you wait until later when it does. And you do not want to be around when those begging, whining, short breaths turn to full conversations intended to manipulate and control you. It may seem incredibly desperate here, but this slowly gets replaced with cunning. March 13th, 2005. The second video, titled Love.Thumper, gives us only a bit more context than the first. We see the Locust tapping on a screen, presumably the same screen we saw earlier, as he says, "Hello" and "Hi" over and over again. While the first video was in this sort of silent first-person perspective and it was very easy to put yourself into the video, in this one we are looking from the perspective of some child or teenager who responds to the creature asking what it wants. The Locust responds with, "I am hungry." The child seems frightened and tells the Locust to please go away. I take it he didn't like that. We get to actually see his hands here, confirming the idea that the hand in the first video wasn't his. The hands, or more appropriately limbs, resemble long pointed swords, and as it bangs them into the screen, cracking it, I can't help but wonder if it learned from the previous victim and is now applying that knowledge. That, coupled with how it speaks English now, leads me to believe that it was once human and just didn't speak before, just chose not to, or it's a highly intelligent creature that has picked up vaguely human speech patterns in an incredibly short amount of time. While in the first video we were looking directly at the screen, in this one, we follow the child's movement as he looks around helplessly, seeking some sort of escape that won't come, as the locust breaks easily through the screen and we see its hideous head start to poke out, only for the camera to cut away. The child we were following manages to escape to what appears to be some sort of basement to wait and pray, because we are now in a strange, dark room looking at a slightly cracked open doorway, and we see a volume knob get turned down. And I have a few ideas as to what this is, all of them returning to the basic idea that the creature is connected to the TV or the module that it escaped from. I think it's possible that the locust turned down the volume knob, which decreases the amount of noise it makes as it moves around in real life as it stalks this child waiting to devour him. And we hear what might be the loud pulse of the kid as he watches the silent beast in terror, watching as he slowly pokes the door open wider and wider. Dr. Nowhere's use of shadows, darkness, and negative space is phenomenal throughout these videos. We barely see anything except the static darkness and the slowly opening door, but we can see the distorted shadow of the being as it gently strokes the door, seemingly figuring out how to open it or even building up the courage to strike. Then it pokes its head through, grinding its jaw. And you might be feeling a little uneasy now. So to lighten the mood, I want to tell you exactly what this behavior reminds me of. If you've ever owned a cat, maybe you've seen them do this thing where they creep up on you. And even though you can clearly see them, they seem to believe that if they hold still for long enough, they'll turn invisible or you'll forget that they exist. It's very funny, and yeah, this dude's just a little guy. Isn't he adorable? Do you feel better now? Awesome, because it's about to get way worse. It stares at the child and then seems to attack. And normally you'd expect some sort of jump scare here, but instead there's nothing. Some slightly weird music and a fade to this screen where the screen is shattered, and text reads, "The body appeared untouched." It killed the child somehow, but not in any immediately obvious way. And for now, this is left entirely to our imaginations to fill in the blanks. The final noise we hear is a sort of canned sitcom laughter, perhaps mocking us for our inability to escape. The final video, titled Making.Friends, gives us a ton of important information about how the locust operates, and in some ways can be viewed as a sort of key to unlocking all the hidden stuff going on here. At least in my current interpretation of the story, this takes place directly after the events of Love.Thumper, and it starts a little bit more abstract. Opening on TV static, then switching to a montage of items with little bits of text over them. Time to rise and shine. Good children are up bright and early. Good children play pretend. Good children do not play with their food until it is all gone. Good children make friends. I believe this locust is learning how to interact with the world around it, and the childlike element is evident in every video up till this point and is crucial to understanding the character of the creature. The locust was afraid to even enter the room with the child recording it in the last video, and here we see it learning about the world through platitudes about being a good child. We hear a beating heart, much like what we heard before, but this time we actually see the heart in the dismal room the locust originated in. Does this mean that those heartbeats that we heard were actually the creature's? Or perhaps it means that the creature stole the child's heart, which might make sense with further context that we get a little later, so just bear with me. Keep that idea in mind. The majority of this short takes place on a website called Pen Palace. Connect in seconds, pals for life as we watch a seemingly innocuous conversation between two kids in a chat room. The copyright being from 2005 is further proof that this video takes place very near the last one, and an overlay shows us the footage we are watching is for government personnel only. What does this mean? Are the tapes we are watching all government property as they study this childlike insect thing? I personally have no idea, but it sure is fun to speculate. We get to watch their messages to each other play out, slowly coming to the horrible realization that whoever Dominic 999 was, he has been replaced by the Locust. And the following is a voiced transcription of their messages. Hello. Yo, man. What's up? It's been like forever. Okay. I seriously thought you were dead or something. Look, we've been online friends for a while now. Yes. Best friends. Yeah. Hey, look, I know it's none of my business, but it feels like you've been acting really distant lately. Have you been going through something? If so, I'm here, and you can talk to me, man. Okay. Like I said, it's none of my beeswax, and you don't have to say nothing, but do you need something? Face call, please. Video call. It's like almost 1 a.m. where I am, man. Whack time zones, remember? Please, now. Seriously, are you good? Like I said, I'm here to talk if you want to talk. I know you started that new school recently and it was whack. Okay, yes, talk, face. Hey, no, seriously, I can't. Really sorry, but tomorrow, okay? Please let me, friend. Seriously, are you alright, Dominic? Please, 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 please. Whoa, okay. Please, 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 please. Not cool, man. What the heck? Okay. Please just be as quiet as possible. Like, whisper. Yes. Remember, my mom is a light sleeper. Starving. Help, please. I swear, if this is a weird, hacking prank, hated those. They were never fun. Answering the Hat Man's phone call at 3 a.m. challenge. Look at him go. And then it simply cuts back to the beating heart with the text. None of it makes any sense. Everything inside was gone. Some people online have speculated that maybe this means that the creature steals people's organs from inside their body without leaving any trace. So when an autopsy is performed, everything inside is just empty. The original name of the creature was the Organator before it was changed to the Locust. And it reminds me of that wasp that got named Xenomorph because it lays its eggs into other insects like caterpillars, and then the caterpillar is slowly eaten alive until the babies burst forth. Notice how the text is similar to the titles of the videos with the misspellings and the strange punctuation. It's almost like the Locust himself is the one uploading these videos. And if it functions by attacking through digital spaces and visual mediums, then maybe it wants us to watch these so it can infect our brains and eventually steal our organs. Now, don't get me wrong, I love all types of cheesy horror stuff. I don't mind bad analog horror, and I find plenty of it charming. But notice how quiet this is, how it gets in your head and really makes you think long and hard, even after the video has stopped playing. I love the retro aesthetics, I love the VHS filters, but even more, I think I love the very obvious lack of jump scares, the cool and unique creature designs, and also how the channel just keeps improving past this point. You thought this was cool? Not even close, man. According to Silas, this isn't the end of the Organator's story, but it's around as far as we've gotten thus far. And before moving on, I really want to talk about how unique the villain of this series is. I almost find myself rooting for it because it evokes a sort of pity response in me. Similar to how a baby animal appears non-threatening and its clumsy attempts at existence register as cute to us. It makes me wonder if this is a full-grown one of its kind, and if not, how a full-grown one might act. But maybe that's besides the point of its design. Regardless, The second piece we're going to be discussing today is called The Boy in the Bath. And it has a pretty distinct style, even when compared to the foot fetish one. You'll notice pixel graphics and even more use of the sort of negative space that we saw earlier. Oh, and just in case you're unaware, negative space as a concept in art and design is the empty space around and between the subjects of an image. Negative space may be most evident when the space around a subject, not the subject itself, forms an interesting or artistically relevant shape. And such space occasionally is used to artistic effect as the real subject of an image. Since I recently saw the Nosferatu remake, let's use the original from 1922 as an example. Look at how the shadow creates more complex shapes and draws our focus in towards the subject. It adds so much character, and it's something I noticed Dr. Nowhere using a lot throughout his pieces. Look at this frame from The Boy in the Bath. Lots of outlining darkness that almost makes this shower feel like it's separated from the rest of the universe. We are alone with the boy, and his frame looms harshly. The short begins with some text that hooks immediately into your mind. Your body remains unclean from the toils of yesterday. Then we are staring up at some ceiling lights in complete darkness, but we are in no condition to sleep like this. We stare as the clock's hands keep ticking downwards and think to ourselves, a shower would make us feel better. It could wash whatever this dirty feeling is away. We see an empty crib, and then we get up and start to head to the bathroom, hesitating at a door before finally pulling it open like some 90s point-and-click game. Now we find ourselves in a hallway, and we can faintly hear water running, and we think, but it wasn't my fault. And then we open the door to the bathroom to be greeted by a lanky, pale, white creature. This is the titular boy. Hello, boy. He turns off the shower, then stares at you as strange music plays in the background, and in a slow, deliberate voice, he asks, "Why did you leave me here?" I never existed to you. You immediately slam shut the door to escape the accusation and the accompanying guilt, returning to your bedroom. We stare blankly at the crib, and then blink, and suddenly, the boy is there with us, in the crib. How lovely. He says, again with that strange vocal inflection that drags out every word, "I know you heard me. It was all your fault." And as it ends, we can still faintly hear the dripping from the faucet. There is no obvious evil. There is no jump scare. All that's left is the unbearable weight of the guilt that you feel for the harm you inflicted. What harm, you might ask? I have no idea. The viewer is left to fill in the blanks, likely with something far worse to them than anything that the creator could personally come up with. Is it supposed to be a miscarriage down the drain and some form of postpartum depression that comes afterwards, with the boy being a manifestation of that trauma? Or is it a real abused and neglected child and we are the monstrous parent in the story? We are Opal's mother. Or is it some secret third thing that you guys, gals, and non-binary pals might want to tell me about in the comments? Maybe it's that he was dropped on the head as a child, because what the fuck? Something that I love about pretty much all of Dr. Nowhere's work is how the creatures are portrayed. These weren't evil. They were heartbreaking, and I ended up empathizing more with the creatures than the point of view stand-ins for main characters. They are portrayed as this tragedy. The first being unable to communicate and reeking of desperation and this idea of childlike innocence being corrupted. And the second where, if it is an abused kid, his parents don't give a fuck about him and they downplay whatever it is that he's going through. These creatures are adorable, easy to sympathize with. And I think that's such an interesting concept for a monster that is in a piece of media that's supposed to be horror. It's great, it's unique to see monsters that aren't abjectly evil. Now let's talk about the boiled one. If you love evil, you are hoping for more evil, more malevolence, more malicious intent coming from your analog horror, then this is it. This is one of the single most evilly constructed pieces of art that I've personally seen in a long time in this space. For me, it was even more impactful than the dream manipulation altering sequence in Local 58. From start to finish, The Boiled One is a masterpiece, and I am very excited to talk about it if you cannot tell. The Boiled One phenomenon heavily uses this found footage aesthetic with grainy visuals and a sense of real-world documentation. And this all works together to create a sense of realism and immersion, making the events depicted feel much more believable. The found footage feeling pulls me into the narrative, making me feel like I am uncovering a genuine yet disturbing mystery. So let's go over the whole thing front to back. The video opens with a warning and some instructions. First, acknowledging that viewing the disturbing content might have unexpected effects on the viewer and begs you to exercise caution. It then advises viewers to gather earplugs, a pencil, paper, and a Bible open to Psalms 91:10. Then it's suggested that if something unusual begins speaking in tongues tangible to the naked ears, viewers should insert their earplugs and start writing affirmations on the piece of paper, followed by a recitation of Psalms 91:10. The affirmations you should write down would read, "I can see this paper, I can see my hand. I can't hear the screaming of thousands, I can't hear the feast. I am a moving, breathing human being on planet Earth." And the Bible verse reads, "No evil shall befall you, and no plague shall come near your dwelling." If unholy memories or imagery appear in your mind, all you can do is pray. Call the authorities if it continues. Many appear to live a normal life afterwards. The purpose of all these actions is to counter potential negative effects of the video, such as intrusive thoughts or disturbing imagery. This whole section, which serves as a kind of intro into the rest of the video, concludes the segment by emphasizing the importance of seeking professional help if these effects persist. There is a split second where those affirmations get overwritten with something else, and this is our first clue that something is very wrong here. I can't see this paper. I have no hand. I can hear the laughter of thousands. I can hear the feast. I cannot move, nor do I want to. August 13th, Tree of Heaven. In the late 1990s, a now classified documentary-based television program would debut from a local station in Pennsylvania. The program revolved around woodland plants and animals and was primarily directed towards children. The star of the show and narrator would talk about the wonders of nature, the dangers of it, how to appreciate it, and most importantly, how to protect yourself from it. Unfortunately, in early 2001, the program would be taken off the air due to the host passing away. Then, something odd happened. On August 13th, 2003, the 13th episode of the series began a rerun seemingly out of nowhere. The following audio depicts the beginning segments of the episode. During one of the interlude segments, an anomalous broadcast would hijack the program. This broadcast depicted videos of a red, melted face that spoke to the viewer in a warm yet deeply disconcerting voice. This face and its properties would be referred to as Fen 228, and Fen 228 has nothing on fentanyl 228. You know what I'm saying? As Fen 228 spoke, clips of footage and even live camera feed monitoring hospitals and bedrooms would be occasionally overlaid on the screen, obscuring Fen 228's face. Though most remember it speaking in English, multiple non-English speaking viewers remember understanding every word that was spoken. A big part of why this video works so well is how it primes you for what is to come. There's a reason it spends so much time with warnings and context, and in my opinion, this is where the genre really shines its brightest. It's not for everybody, but the video uses suggestion and relies on the viewer's imagination to fill in the gaps. Instead of explicit violence or gore, it uses subtle cues and these implied threats to create a lasting sense of unease that sticks with you and creates a constant sense of paranoia that does not let up. Vita Carnis did this type of thing too, and I personally think that it's really cool. It's constantly playing with your mind. The video includes elements like reversed audio and cryptic messages, forcing us to stay engaged to try to solve the puzzle. And if you go and read the Bible verse, or if you take the audio and reverse it, you end up interacting with the piece of media and the entity for long after the video actually ends. And then you're up at night watching some fucking random analysis video, trying to learn more and reassure yourself that it's all in your head. The laughter you heard wasn't real. It was all just part of the video. In another example of priming viewers in order to mess with them, the duration of the clip has been shortened and the audio has been muffled, reversed, and dampened. These alterations are absolutely necessary to suppress its hazardous attributes as effectively as possible. For maximum safety, watch with blue light glasses and insert your earplugs. What follows is an unsettling video with reverse sound of this thing trying to talk to viewers. In between, we can see shots of mundane surroundings which will fade and distort back into Fen 228's face, which as we learn later is a symptom of the ailment this creature inflicts on you. We even get a POV shot of ourselves lying in bed as the creature looms over us. In order to understand everything we can about this piece though, I'm going to reverse the sound so we can hear exactly what he's saying, completely disregarding all the warnings and any regard to my own safety, or yours for that matter.
As a manifestation of my being in the future, you will be asleep in bed. I will be there and watch over you. When you wake, I will not be able to move any part of you. When the doctors eventually find you, they will not see me, but you will, and I'll see you too, forever. I'll see you.
Spooky, huh? This broadcast will hereby be referred to as Broadcast 813. Broadcast 813 was viewed by roughly 530 residents throughout the southern Pennsylvania area, and upon viewing left many severely distraught. Aside from the discomfort and paranoia Fen 228's television presence had brought to the viewers, there were other side effects that these viewers experienced that were highly unnatural. They reported not being able to keep the image of Fen 228's face out of their minds. Some have even continued to hear its voice days after viewing. And here's where things take a turn into much more disturbing territory. A victim who requested to remain anonymous claimed that the face was living in his brain and feeding on his spine. Another described trumpets playing in their ears before they fell asleep. None of these people knew this was only the beginning of a whole new species of suffering that would never be fully understood. Pay close attention to the wording here. A species of suffering? What the hell does that mean? August 14th, 2003. A year mainly known for being the year I was born, and also the Great Northeast Blackout of 2003. Hold on a sec. Let's go to Wikipedia. The Northeast Blackout of 2003 was a widespread power outage throughout parts of northeastern and midwestern United States and most parts of the Canadian province of Ontario. At the time, it was the world's second most widespread blackout in history, after the 1999 Southern Brazil blackout. The outage affected an estimated 55 million people, including 10 million people in southern and central Ontario, and 45 million people in 8 U.S. states. The blackout's proximate cause was a software bug in the alarm system at the control room of First Energy, which rendered operators unaware of the need to redistribute load after overloaded transmission lines drooped into foliage. What should have been a manageable local blackout cascaded into the collapse of much of the Northeast regional electricity distribution system. And so now we have an example of creating alternative history to confuse or convince a viewer into actually being scared. This blackout in 2003 was a real event, and the boiled one is giving us an alternate reason as to why it occurred. After the anomalous frequency was detected by television station troubleshooters, the NERC was ordered by the Ephrata branch to have all power grid grids local to the state of Pennsylvania disabled by 4 p.m. to prevent further escalation of the anomaly and the public knowledge of broadcast 813. The video goes on to describe the calamitous amount of damage caused by the outage, and then we read, "During the confusion caused by the outage, all traces of broadcast 813 were collected and seemingly wiped from existence, including news articles, internet posts, recordings, and more." So then we discover that the reasoning given by the government for the outage was a cover-up all along. 12 days after broadcast 813 was blocked from the air, a historically massive influx of pseudocoma occurred throughout the state of Pennsylvania, leaving 509 people affected and families in shock. And for anyone who's going, "Wait, what's pseudocoma?" It's immediately explained on the next slide as an extremely rare condition in which a patient experiences a cerebromedulospinal disconnection, leaving them conscious but unable to move or communicate verbally due to complete paralysis of all voluntary muscles in the body, except for vertical eye movements and blinking. This anomalous outbreak of such a rare condition was regarded as a spectacle by the US Department of Health and was put under government investigation immediately. And of course, in every case, the affected person had been home watching TV the night that broadcast 813 had aired, leading insightful viewers, such as myself, to the conclusion that the broadcast was likely the cause of the condition. If you look closely at the TV set here, you'll notice Fen is creeping up, just like it did in the very first 2 seconds of this video. Creepy as fuck. The victims were able to communicate using Morse code blinking, and more than 60 victims were interviewed. Unfortunately, most of the interviews led to more questions or results that required archival or termination. However, late in the investigation, they were notified of a certain elderly victim of the outbreak codenamed Job Zamperini, a war veteran who was fluent in Morse code, allowing his interview to be the most insightful of all. But first, again, we are primed for fear. After a very odd photo was taken in his backyard by his visiting grandson, his family became deeply troubled and convinced his house was haunted. This led them to contact a local priest in hopes the house would be blessed. And then we get to see the actual photo, which depicts Fen 228 standing next to a small playhouse in Zamperini's backyard. We are again warned against viewing with the naked eye. So far, this is the most clear picture we've seen of the boiled one, with strange spike-like tendrils jutting out irregularly from his twisted and limbless tube body. There is only that hideous face perched on top, wild eyes rolling and putrid mouth agape. And then it fades away, leaving nothing but the memory of the massively oversized figure besides the toy house. Zamperini claims something horrible and unholy was with him, and would hurt him and possibly others if he described it and what it was telling him. At this point, it's fairly obvious that this entity is infecting or haunting people who view it or hear it, and it paralyzes them and makes them experience terrible auditory and visual hallucinations. The intense suffering is not only terrible, but it also doesn't seem to have any immediate discernible purpose yet. And we are now introduced to some interview footage between Officer T. Gomez and Job Zamperini.
Hello, Mr. I'm Officer Gomez. Hope you're doing well today. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions regarding your condition and possibly unholiness within your home that your family had mentioned? Okay, first and foremost, did you notice any onset symptoms before you lost complete mobility of your body? Face, huh? When did you begin seeing this face? Interesting. Many of the people who have seen the broadcast that you saw on August the 13th described having vivid and upsetting hallucinations. Do you think this is something your brain has created? Can you please describe this face to me? I still don't see it. Have you been having any hallucinations aside from the face? I'm sorry to hear that. Are these screams constant? Thank you. You shedding light on this is helping more than you know.
In my opinion, this is the least compelling part of the mockumentary. Like, the idea is fine, but the actual execution feels a lot more obviously fake than the rest of the short does, which breaks the immersion a little for me. But then it immediately recovers the uncanny feeling of surprise and creeping dread as I latch on to something that looks a bit off. Look down at the corner of the window, and you can just barely make out some horrid nerve-ending spikes poking irregularly up from just beyond the bed sheets. On a sign above the bed read the words, "Give it to God and go to sleep." Job is asked if he noticed any onset symptoms before losing mobility, and he responds in Morse code, "There was a face. After I saw it on TV, it never left me." He says it's in the window when asked if these visions are just something his brain has created, and when asked to describe the face, he responds, "Horribly burnt, not of Lord Christ." The officer asks if he experiences any hallucinations besides the face, and Job says, "I hear screaming of many voices." Sorry to hear that. "At night before I sleep, I hear trumpets too, but Lord Christ is with me." A discerning viewer might notice the sign has new text fading into it, reading, "I can see you." Whether that is directed at Job, the officer, or us watching is not immediately apparent. The officer is cut off by a glitch mid-sentence, though, and the silence is deafening, as we are suddenly forced to contend with what Job faces every waking second now. Ben 228 starts rising from the window, and then we zoom in to see it ascending into the sky, raining over our souls and poisoning our minds. Wonderful day, the miracle of birth, a fetal fanfare. A top comment under the video points out that the Japanese text reads, "Be afraid of the one and only Watanabe bird," which is in reference to a Japanese war criminal who tortured POWs, or prisoners of war. And one of the POWs' names was Louis Zamperini, which is the last name of the old man affected by the broadcast. And their theory is that the boiled one could be Watanabe's spirit torturing Zamperini after his death. Watanabe's death was in 2003, which is the same year that the broadcast aired. There's a movie called Unbroken: Path to Redemption, which is about the real-life Zamperini life after captivity, and how he continues to be plagued by visions of Watanabe interfering with his life. But at the end of the movie, he overcomes the soul-poisoning memories by turning to Christ for help. Dr. Nowhere himself responded to this with, "I was originally planning on basing the whole story on Torrance, which was Lewis's childhood and post-war home, but the blackout never spread there," indicating that this is in fact the basis of his inspiration for the story. And I think that's cool, because it recontextualizes the entire piece and the boiled one himself as a metaphor for war trauma and the manifestation of PTSD. As it rises, we cut back to its face, but just before that there is some static. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if you go back to the start of the video, you can see it rising there as well, which means this file that we've been watching to learn how to protect ourselves from this has been corrupted by it the entire time we've been watching. I'm someone who gets debilitating headaches on a very regular basis, and one thing that I've learned about myself when I was a lot younger is that suggesting or even thinking really hard about having a headache would placebo itself into a full-fledged migraine. And there was really no difference in the amount of pain that makes it feel like there were needles in my eyes and temples and made my stomach churn, like I'm feeling it happening right now. Is this too graphic? The point is, even if you're a little bit prone to suggestion, then the effectiveness of this entire series will increase. We've been told how this thing operates and what it does to its victims for 10 minutes, and now we come to the spine-tingling understanding that it was infecting the very video that we were watching the whole time. And it's constructed in such a way that now, as we realize this, what sound do you think is being faded into the audio? Trumpets, designed to keep you up at night as the Boiled One watches you. It addresses us, telling viewers to listen closely. His mouth stretches and gets longer as he speaks. Do you hear it? We switch to his insides for a bit, which resembles a rib cage, intestines, and is that a gaping mouth or a prolapsed asshole? I can't tell. You will hear the laughter of thousands as the sky opens up. As Fen 228 speaks, his insides squish and move like a beating heart, and we go back to Fen 228's face before quickly going to footage of clouds, red taking over the bottom of one before raining blood. You will hear the trumpets play their happy sounds. The scalding blood of life will pour down onto us all. And we get a close-up of his side where an arm breaks out of his body. Together, we will be still, a feast fit for a king. Together, welded by love and purest connection, the arm is now tweaking the out, something that I've come to expect from Dr. Nowhere's creations in pretty much every one of these videos. Be still and let the before there is this glitch and the images resembling the cloud we were shown that was raining blood before return, only now it has completely overtaken the sky. We are greeted with a warning. If you can see the screen, it means it is not safe to continue viewing. Program will end shortly. Protocol 228 has been initiated, but listen to what the audio is doing here. The Morse code playing here translates to, I still see you. Even stranger though, if we go back to the interview with Job, you'll see one part where the Morse code gets obscured by a different code, much like when something similar happens when we get our instructions, and this code reads, nobody but me and you. Finally, we are told to perform the procedures given us during the introduction immediately. And we are left with this very comforting message. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. The Boiled One is a masterpiece of analog horror, and this entire channel is something I'm very excited to be able to follow the progress of. Dr. Nowhere has something really special here, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I think The Boiled One, with that context from the creator, is a very strong metaphor for PTSD, and how that terror you face can follow and haunt you like a trumpet sounding beside your bed every night, blood raining down from an otherwise calm sky, and the faces of the dead that breathe fear into your dreams are etched permanently into your mind, returning to you from the most mundane of places. You know how when something really bad happens to you and it stays with you, how something small can trigger a memory as your brain gets forced down that neural pathway again, strengthening the fear in a feedback loop that just gets worse the longer it goes? Oh, is that just me? Is this suddenly not a safe space anymore? Running down in circles, running down in circles. First, I'd like to thank the patrons. Welcome in Thomas, new guy, let's go, woo! I love you guys. Okay, Thomas, Audrey, Justin, Lou, Ray, ZK, Tom, Dave, Elkie, Stardrop, Nude, George, Joseph, and Mr. Fox. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. See you soon.